Okay, guys, in this video, we're going to talk about the millennial weights and measures and the prince's offering. Now, as we get into this, it's really good if you have followed along the recent videos. In the recent videos, to summarize real quick, we've seen how there is a temple offering taking place throughout the bowls of Revelation chapter 16, and the temple in heaven is dedicated. The altar in heaven is dedicated. So this is taking place, and this is cleansing the earth for the millennial reign of Christ. Now, in the millennial reign of Christ, that's where we're going to mostly connect this message. This message is going to connect to different types of playlists that we have, like the man-child, okay, and particularly the millennium. Now, most of you, you grew up in a country, you're basically just used to the things that you just do day in and day out, different types of measurements, currency, all of these things. You're just used to. This is the way you do stuff. But you never really think about what it is you're doing or why it is you're doing what you're doing, why certain things are taking place, why currency, not really researching it. Now, when Christ comes, this is why I'm just setting the backdrop here, guys. When Christ comes, he comes to set a millennial kingdom. When he does, think of it like setting up a new country. Most of you are Americans. Think about the founding fathers. Okay, so they had the opportunity. They had to do a country. They could do it any way they want. They could set up a government. They could do it any way they wanted to, right? So they went about doing that. All right, that was their decision. So think about that terms of forming a nation, making a decision on measurements and currency and government and things like that. Okay, so you have all these things going into, okay, this is our country. Now, that's Babylon. Now, you may not realize how much Babylon is Babylon until you look at the just weights and measures of the kingdom of Israel in the millennial reign of Christ. This is more than we can get into in this video, but I want you to think about what we're going to look at in this video in those terms. So when the Most High sets his kingdom and his reign through Alpha and Omega, we're going back to what his original intentions were all the way back in the Garden of Eden. We didn't really get that far because you have sin and you have, being banished. But if Adam and Eve had the opportunity to have children and, they would have built, something to worship God, they would have had the same things that we see in heaven. So yes, the weights and measures in the millennial reign of Christ are things we can see in heaven. Okay, so basically what we're going to look at is something called the prince's offering. Now, in the day I'm recording this video, it's the 12th day of the first month. I'll just show you that real quick on the calendar. Okay, the 12th, so here we are in the first month. We're on a Sunday. Okay, it's the 12th day. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's the 12th day of the first month. Now, on the 12th day of the first month, historically what happened is, as we've been going over a series of videos, we've been showing you guys how when Moses set up the tabernacle, the priests were in the courtyard of the tabernacle 7 days. Then what happened is the princes, there were 12 princes representing the 12 tribes, and each day they brought an offering to the dedication of the altar. So what they did is they brought an offering, and in the offering, it was a platter. This is our platter, and it had fine grain in it. Okay? So each one of the 12 tribes had a platter. It was 130 shekels. So it's a precise weight is what we're getting at. So I want you to think in terms of this is hard currency, real things. So for example, the weight of the platter was 130 shekels. So here you can see a shekel ancient shekel. And so there would be 130 of these melted down to go into the weight of a platter. So that's why you can have just weights and measures. Now, this is all totally removed from our modern society. We don't have anything like this. Okay? So we must look at these things and look at their significance. So each one brings a platter, 130 shekels. Each one will bring a bowl. Okay? Here's our just our example of a bowl. He brings a bowl, and this bowl is 70 shekels. Okay, the weight, the number of shekels that goes into the bowl, 70 shekels. And there's 12 of those, right? So you have 12 platters, you have 12 bowls, and 12 spoons. And 12 spoons, the weight of each spoon, the amount of weight of each shekel that goes in each spoon is 10 shekels in each spoon. Now, some of the definitions of things that we're looking at here are not exactly like a platter or bowl. They can be slightly different. It's not like the King James is just using these terms, okay? But I want you to think and consider that, for example, the spoon, it could be a small vessel like a cup. It could be more something like a cup versus a spoon. Okay, but these vessels are which each of the tribes bring. Now, when they bring the spoon, it is filled with incense. So there was incense, not a liquid incense, but a hard incense that went into the spoon, and each prince, 12 princes, gave this offering along with other offerings. Now, what these are offerings that we know as a grain offering. For example, in the grain offering, you would have a wheat in there. You would mix it with oil. Okay? You would have oil in there, and you would have incense. Okay? And so that offering, the high priest would take that, and that would go into the altar. Okay? They'll go into the altar, and that is part of what's called a grain offering. Okay? So that's what we can see with the 7 angels. They have 7 bowls, and they take their bowls and they pour something out upon the earth. Okay, so it's like this offering. It's this grain offering. Okay, we saw that in the other video, and we covered that. But what we're going to do in this video, guys, is we have a detailed study as we have with each one, but we want to do admonitions to the ecclesia. So what that means is use teachings of the apostles to incorporate what is happening here, okay, in the book of Revelation, what's happening in the Torah, okay, along with the apostles. Okay, so there's epistles to the churches, and if we go to Timothy, go 2 Timothy, and verse 18, it says, concerning the truth, they have erred, saying that the resurrection is past, and overthrow some. So here we're talking about the resurrection. Nevertheless, verse 19, the foundation of God stands sure, having the seal. Okay? So what are we talking about? We're talking about the resurrection. We're talking about the seal. Okay? Now, what we can see is that the seal, the Lord knows those that are his. Everyone that names the name of Christ departs from evil. So what this means is the name of Christ, the name of God is in the seal. It is written on their foreheads, okay? This is the foundation. Now, verse 20. In a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, okay, but of wood and of earth. Some of honor, some of dishonor. Okay, so you can see we have vessels of earth, and the vessels of earth, we'll see that the vessels of earth relate to some of the dry and liquid measures, okay? But there's different types of vessels, as we can clearly see, right? So we have different types of vessels. We have gold, we have silver, in a great house. So this is the temple. And there are not only vessels of gold and silver and wood and earth, some to honor, some to dishonor. And then we are admonished, if a man therefore will purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified, meat for the master's use, prepared for every good work. So we submit ourselves to be a vessel. In the temple, you say, well, the temple is people. Yes. And the people are not only the building, okay? The people are also the vessels, okay? So when Moses received these offerings, okay, sometimes what he did is he received the vessels that the princes in this case made, and they submitted to him. Other times he would receive the gold as an offering from them. So that gold was melted, and it went into making the vessels. Thus, you have an offering received from the people of the gold. Thus, the people become the vessels. Okay, does that make sense? So that's what the principle of what we see here. But we see something significant. We see the resurrection. We see the seal. Okay, so that's what we can see in 2 Timothy. We'll also look more at this principle. Now, as we explain, you can see there's different types of vessels, as I said. Okay, now let's talk about the governmental order of Christ in his millennial kingdom. This is extremely exciting, very, very interesting. It'll be part of our millennial series playlist. So what we have is the governmental order. I want you to think of it in terms you're used to. Okay, most of you in the United States, you're used to a Senate, right? Okay, well, Christ will have a Senate. He will have a kind of rulers, 120 rulers, okay? And they will rule throughout his kingdom. That's like a Senate, okay? All right, then what you have is you have another group called the 1,200. We're going to talk about them in this video. And what they are is like, you know how you have the House of Representatives, right? So the House of Representatives, you have the senators over a certain state, okay? Then you have the number of people in various cities represented by, representatives, okay? So that's why when Christ, he talked about you were pounds, okay? Gave them 10 pounds, okay? And they were faithful over their pounds, and their pounds related to cities. You've been faithful in 5 pounds, I'll give you 5 cities, okay? You see that? So those people are pounds, okay? And those pounds relate to rulership over cities. So that's a governmental order. Now, the modern state of Israel also has a governmental order with these numbers. For example, they have a Knesset. Okay, so they have a Knesset. They have 120 seats approximately in their Knesset. Those are to represent the people, okay, and to make laws and to decide, right? So and that goes back to an ancient principle called the Council of Great Men. And it's 120. That's why you got 120 in the upper room. And in the last days, in Christ's millennial kingdom, he will have 120. All right? Now, then, in the modern state of Israel, then what you have is you have the state of Israel, you have the 120 of the Knesset. Then Israel has Mossad. And Mossad is not in the state. They're all over the world. And they're, of course, very infamous. But the number of them is approximately 1,200. Okay? So that's how the modern state of Israel kind of mirrors, in a way, Christ's millennial kingdom, because he will have the state, okay, he will have the area of the promised land, and then his kingdom will go outside that, go beyond that. It'll go from India to Ethiopia, all right? And so that area scattered, there'll be cities, and then in those cities, there'll be representatives of those cities, okay? So it's important we realize that when we get into the backdrop of Ezekiel, okay? So when we get to Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel begins to define for us that governmental order. Now, it doesn't say specifically the numbers we gave you. We've come about these numbers by other ways. But actually, let's go to Ezekiel. No, we'll just explain it. So in the book of Ezekiel, what you have is, let's remember what happened. Yahweh his glory went into the temple, and he spoke to Ezekiel out of the temple. So he speaks out of the temple, chapters 43 through 48. When he speaks out of the temple, he begins to talk about the order of his millennial kingdom in the order of priesthood. So when he does, the first ones he mentions is something called the Sons of Zadok. Okay? So the Sons of Zadok, they're described, okay, in Ezekiel chapter 44. So in Ezekiel chapter 44, they're the priests, okay, in the temple. Then we get to Ezekiel chapter 45, and Ezekiel chapter 45 talks about another category of people called the princes. So, if our view and understanding is according to these patterns, you would have the Sons of Zadok, the 120 order, and then you would have the princes, another order, 1,200, representing the people. Okay? So, then we get to these admonitions in this order of these princes and this governmental order. Now, what we're going to do in our notes, okay, we're going to get to our notes later. We're going to talk you through everything first, and then we'll get to it. All right, so we have these princes, and these princes are told what to do. Okay, don't oppress the people. You're supposed to divide the tribes. You're supposed to execute judgment. Okay, they're given certain instructions. Okay, now this matches what we can see in the Torah. When Moses, he said, provide able men that fear the truth, hating covetousness, princes of thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens. Let them judge the people. Now, if you order that by tribes, tens times 12, 120, hundreds, 1,200, and thousands, 12 times thousands is 12,000. So you got the 144,000 represented, you have the 1,200 and the 120. Okay, in the Torah. Now, this is the order we see in Revelation, chapter 20, verse 4. Judgment was given to those. They sat on thrones. They were priests unto God and reigned with him 1,000 years. Okay? So who is this? Well, Revelation 12:5, this is the man-child that was given the rod of iron. And Revelation 14:3, these are the elders. So what we're going to see is that we have Ezekiel describing something. We can see that in the Torah. We can see that with Moses, precisely at the same time when Yahweh was speaking to Moses out of the tabernacle, speaking to Ezekiel out of the temple, and in Revelation we have the same orders, okay? So in Revelation what we're going to see is that it's all angels that are administering the vessels of judgment. And those vessels of judgment are offerings. All right, so let's go back to Ezekiel, and we can see that also, we talked about the sons of Zadok. In chapter 44, they will have cases. They will judge my judgments in laws and statutes and assemblies and the Sabbaths. And it says they will teach the people the difference between what is holy and what is unholy. They'll teach them those things, okay? That's the priest. That's the sons of Zadok. That's what they'll do. In Leviticus 19:15, they will do no unrighteousness in judgment and show no respect of persons. Okay. Now, let's get into this offering, because once we see these princes, we are told, okay, they're told how to handle themselves, all right, but then they're told to bring an offering, okay, they're told to bring an offering, and not only that, they're told about the weights and measures of the kingdom. So, in 45, verse 13, the prince's offering, okay, is described, and then we have the proper measurements of what the amounts are. So in this example, we have the ephah, okay? 1/6 of an ephah is of wheat, is what they're supposed to bring, okay? And 1/6 of an ephah of barley is what they're supposed to bring. They're supposed to bring one lamb, okay, a sheh, out of a flock of 200. And then they're told about 3 types of offering they're supposed to bring. They're supposed to bring a grain offering, a burnt offering, and a peace offering. Okay? So, this offering, okay, this is happening in Ezekiel. Okay, this we believe is happening now. Okay? Not, on the earth, but around the throne. The princes are being gathered, the order of the man-child, okay? This is happening in heaven. Now, in heaven, it's being done not by offering animals, but it's done by worship, by singing mostly, okay? But when we look at the pattern of this, and we look at the vessels, and we look at what's being taught and instructed, we do see this in Numbers chapter 7 with the 12 princes offering. So, as we mentioned, today is the 12th day. That means from the first day to the 12th day, there were 12 days. Each day, a prince would bring this offering. So we see this, and they're dedicating the altar. They bring a silver platter. They bring a silver bowl. Okay, each bowl is filled with the fine flour and the oil for a grain offering. See that? Okay, they bring these vessels. Now, of course, the 4 living creatures and 24 elders, they also have the same vessels. A gold bowl or cup full of the odors and prayers of the saints. Okay, so just like that's what you see. Okay, then the princes bring the gold spoon of 10 shekels, full of what? Incense. So you have the incense in the spoon, right? Well, as we saw, in the bowl that they had was full of odors and incense. And we also have the angel by the altar. Okay, he goes by the altar and he gets the gold censer. And there was given him much incense, that he would offer it with the prayers of the saints. So that's a Revelation chapter 8. Okay, so the vessels that we see the princes giving are the same vessels we see throughout the book of the Revelation that the angels are administering. Okay, so then we get to, they are to do a burnt offering, a bullock, a ram, a lamb, and a sin offering, for a goat, a kid, and a peace offering. Okay, and then oxen, ram, goats, lambs of the first year are mentioned. Okay, so there we see that there are vessels that they bring. These vessels we saw in the New Testament relate to the sealed ones, those that have submitted themselves for vessels to be used. But let's remember, all of these were measured by a certain weight. Okay, so just like we have our scales here, there's a specific weight that will go into each vessel. And the weight is not just how heavy it is. The weight is a coin. The weight is how you buy and sell. Okay? It's called the shekel of the sanctuary. So we have the shekel of the sanctuary, and that's a measurement of a certain coin. The weight of that coin will go into the vessels. Now, when Christ reigns, okay, this is instituted as the currency. Okay, so as the currency in the millennium, there's going to be a currency. He's going to have a shekel. Okay, and he said to remove your evil ways. So most of what we are accustomed with money are evil ways, because it is a false Babylon system that we're used to. Okay, so what Christ does is he will institute a coin and a currency that doesn't have the Babylon system. Okay, for example, inflation and all these other things that go into currency manipulation, all these things. We no longer have a hard currency where we can say, okay, this is our currency. It's this much gold or silver. It weighs such and such much, and I am going to use that to purchase whatever. That doesn't exist anymore. The currency is just paper. It's like this. Okay, that it's just ones and zeros. Okay, on a device. It's not real. Okay, so this whole world of just not real, of debt, of inflation. I mean, I used to work as a financial advisor, and I said, how does this work? How can it be possible that there's an answer to this corrupt and evil system? And I've gone through many years to understand the types of things I'm teaching you now to see how do we overcome. And we're going to get to that later in the video. So now we can see that all the vessels of Revelation are part of the 12 princes offering. Okay? And we have the priesthood, all right, setting these measures. Now let's look a little bit at some of the measures back in Ezekiel 45. So these princes, the ones that are ruling, they're admonished to have just balances. Okay, so you see I got some balances here. There's to have just balances. Now this one in particular is very, very sensitive. Anything you put in it has to be perfect. All right, so the word in Hebrew, when we see just, is Zadok. Zadok means righteousness. Okay, so you have to have righteous balances. You have to have a righteous ephah. This is not an ephah. An ephah is going to be much larger. not exactly sure. A righteous bath, okay? And an ephah and a bath shall be one measure. Each are 1/10 part of a omer. Okay, so an ephah is a 10th part of an omer. In this example, we're not going to get so much into the sizes of these weights and measurements, but just think of it like the way you think of normal measurements. Okay, a gallon, a liter. Okay, so these things are replacing those, and they have a direct corresponding number to them. Okay, let's see. Do I have it here? Okay, well, I don't, but it does say an omer is 50 shekels. So all the types of market manipulation and things that go on is gone. Now, whatever, if this is an omer, okay, let's just call this an omer. Let's say what that is. Whatever's, and the amount of wheat that's in that omer, okay, it's going to be a fixed amount of shekels. Now, this is not an omer. An omer is almost like a mound of wheat. Okay, it's a lot, and being it's that much, it's 50 shekels. Okay, so 50 shekels is an omer, but it doesn't change. You see that? I mean, if you asked your grandparents how much they bought their house, you'll see it's pretty close to how much you bought your car. What is that? It's called inflation. It means the price of goods and services incrementally goes up and up and up. It's crazy. It's Babylon. It's an evil, wicked system. But what this is talking about is that, yes, there's a currency, there is a weight and a measure, and it doesn't change. It doesn't have inflation. It's not connected to a Babylon system. It's back to a very, very simple weight and measure, okay? So that's where you can see there are examples where you can have catastrophic things that can increase the price of food and things like that. But in a general sense, if you read the Old Testament, you'll see that the amount of what things cost doesn't change for like hundreds of years. You know, it's the same. It's the same. Okay, so that's what it's going to in the future. So as we look at our weights, our weights and just righteous balances, scales, ephah. We also see this in Leviticus 19:35. Do no unrighteousness in judgment and measure and weight and measure. Okay, have Zadok righteous balances. Zadok, righteous, ephah, and weights. Okay, so remember, weights is a coin or a stone. In fact, I think I'll try to show you guys some ancient. And what we're looking at here are actual examples of vessels that we had looked at, pottery vessels for measuring cups, if you were, or measuring vessels. And this is during the Second Temple period time, measuring bowls. And we also have here some weights. These are the weights. You have just weights, okay, in your balances. So there's other vessels here. And we are admonished to have Zadok, or righteous, weights. And earlier we looked at the ephah. And these are reconstructions of the vessel called the ephah, which would hold dry and liquid measures. But you can see they're a lot larger than the example we have. Okay, a hin. All of these weights, all these balances in Leviticus, it's talking about they shall be according to the shekel of the sanctuary. A shekel shall be 20 gerahs. Okay, that's the fraction of a shekel. All right, so the shekel of the sanctuary is the currency. And we see that in Ezekiel Chapter 45, where it says the shekel will be 20 gerahs. This expression means this is called the shekel of the sanctuary. Then it describes that there are 60 shekels in a minna. A minna is a pound. Okay, so again, this is a currency. So if you were to have a smaller current amount of currency, a shekel, all right, your larger amount will be a pound. Okay, you know, you got the British pound, right? Okay, that's somewhat this principle. But this represents a certain number of people, because in Luke 19, he gave them 10 pounds. Those 10 pounds, okay, times 60 shekels is 600 shekels. Now, each shekel represents 2 people. Okay, so if you have 1 shekel, that would represent 2 people. Let's say I'm a person there and I'm a person here. That's 2 people. That's 1 coin. So you have 600 coins. You multiply that by 2, you get 1,200. Precisely the order of these princes. That's what the 10 pounds are. Okay, so we can see that there is a currency. Yet, how are we to understand this in the admonition to the ecclesia? Okay, we are to remove the dross. You can see like these vessels. This one is rusted. Okay, this one has all kinds of it's very old. It has all kinds of tarnished things on it. Okay, so we are to cleanse our vessel. Okay, like this one is pretty good because I bought it new. But basically what we're getting at is we are to submit ourselves as vessels of righteousness for the master's use. Okay, now as it relates to these things, we want to look at what Peter said, because something is going on very significant. So when we earn these things, are granted these blessings, it's only by the trial of your faith. Okay, so in 1 Peter 1:4, our inheritance is incorruptible, reserved in heaven. Verse 7, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than gold, though it be tried by fire, be found unto the praise and the honor and the glory at the appearing, apocalypsis, of Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is talking about our faith, the trial of our faith, okay, that we are to overcome. And the trial of our faith, okay, is more precious than gold, but it's like gold in it's tried in the fire, tried in the furnace. And then we go to verse 18, for you are not redeemed with corruptible silver, okay, and gold from your vain lifestyle, and these principles delivered to your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish, without spot. So there we can see we are not redeemed by, we're redeemed by the precious blood of the Lamb. Amen. But we, in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 14, must be found unto him in peace, without spot, and blameless. All right, guys, we're on a series of messages where we looked at how the house of David is showing us Revelation chapter 14 and 15. That's what we've been going over in great detail. So here we can see all of the prophecies being fulfilled by David bringing the Ark of the Covenant into the tabernacle of David. Okay, so that's the house of David worship in Revelation 14 and 15. Okay, the Song of Moses, we saw the sign of the Son of Man. Okay, the 7th trumpet, the Ark of the Covenant, showing us the Feast of Weeks. That's in Revelation 10, 11, and 12. Okay, in the book of Jeremiah, along with the house of David. We saw that in the house of David, as we mentioned in this video, we'll show it to you here. It's worth mentioning that in Revelation 14:3 there are the elders, different classes of elders. One of them is the class of 1,200. It's precisely 1,206 in the house of David. That's seen in 1 Chronicles 9 and 15. If you add that up, that's what it comes to. So those are some previous videos that hopefully you've followed along. And then we've come to the temple offering. Okay, we saw the temple offering in Leviticus and Ezekiel and Revelation. Okay, and then today we have the prince's offering, and that's what we're going over here. And we'll just summarize what we've discussed so far in this video. Okay, we have the notes for this one as well. We'll put this notes in the Millennial playlist. Okay, so what we have is the book of Ezekiel. We can see the princes. Okay, the princes were ordered in the Torah, and they're the elders in Revelation. They bring cases. You have classes of princes. You have the sons of Zadok. Okay, And we have the prince's offering. So the prince's offering is also seen in Numbers chapter 7, okay, with the 12 princes. They're offering to dedicate the altar, the platters, bowls, and spoons, okay. We see the same vessels with the living creatures, the elders, and the 7 angels, and the angel in Revelation 8 with the incense, the prayers of the saints, which is the shekel of the sanctuary. And Christ said, "Redeem from me gold tried in the fire." And that's what we saw in Peter. So in 2 Timothy, we saw these are the sealed ones as vessels. Okay, so the princes were to give 1/6 of an ephah of wheat, 1/6 of an ephah of barley. We saw in Revelation chapter 6. He had the balances, and he had in the balances a measure of wheat for a denarius, 3 measures of barley for a denarius, okay? So these are the just measures, the righteous measures. They were to bring a lamb out of 200 from a flock, a grain burnt peace offerings, okay? So that's clearly number 7, what's happening there in Ezekiel chapter 45 with the princes, okay? And then we saw in the millennium there will be just measures, okay? The royal priesthood, which you see the royal priesthood in 1 Peter chapter 2, and then we read 1 Peter chapter 1, where it's talking about how we've been redeemed, okay? But we have just balances, okay? Zadok balances, Zadok ephah, Zadok bath. So that Zadok means righteous. And we have the shekel of the sanctuary, which is the millennial currency. So guys, I'll make the notes available, and this will be part of a couple series we have, one on the man-child and also on the millennium. So again, I'll have the notes available for you. Definitely get the notes. Do some studying. Maybe you can get this and print this off by the time you watch the video. Will be helpful because we are also demonstrating in this video. So fear God. Give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him that made the heavens, the earth, the seas, and the fountains of waters. Amen.